Hi everyone, I'm Amy Stenson, the trial manager for MND SMART, and I'm delighted to be here today to be presenting to you on the setup and running of a clinical drug trial alongside my colleague Ethan Stoker, who is one of the senior research nurses on the trial and who some of you may know from having taken part in MND SMART. So MND SMART may be familiar to many of you as a UK-wide trial. It's MND Scotland's largest investment in history, £2 million investment, which we're hugely grateful for. MND SMART is largely charity funded. And so this huge investment will make a massive impact on the resourcing for the trial. So we're here representing the trial team, and you can see some of our key members in the picture for this presentation. We've got Stephen Morris, who's our patient representative, Judy Neaton, who is the MND nurse consultant, Dr. Savanka, or Professor Savanka Pal, I should say, who is leading co-lead investigator for the trial with Professor Siddharth Chandran. And then also Dr. Jane Haley, who is the director for MND Scotland. So our trial headquarters at the Anne Rowling Clinic, but we're part of a much wider trial team, which we'll speak a bit more about as well as a little bit about the trial design and how we set up a clinical trial. So I'll hand over to Ethan to speak a bit more about why we have set up the trial, and then I'll speak a bit about how the trial design works and what this means for how we manage the running and setup of a clinical trial.
Thank you, Amy. So as Amy said, I'll just be going through sort of a bit of background on MND SMART and sort of why the trial is needed in the first place. So currently, at any sort of one point in the UK, there's around 5,000 people living with MND, and around 200 of those or so in Scotland, with around 1,500 or so people diagnosed with MND across UK a year. MND, or motor neuron disease, is a neurodegenerative disorder that is progressive and terminal. So most people who are diagnosed with MND have a prognosis of around about 18 months to 2 years. So it's a very sort of short time frame where people with MND can sort of rapidly begin to lose body function and require lots of sort of support and adjustments as their condition begins to sort of worsen. As a result, it has a sort of large political focus due to the sort of vast resources that are required to sort of care for people with MND, but it's also very impactful for the people with MND themselves and the family members and friends. It can be a really debilitating disease and can be sort of very tough to sort of live with. So there's a real sort of socio and political focus on MND, but despite that, there exists only one licensed drug for MND in the UK called Riluzole. And despite the sort of hundreds of drugs that have been tested for MND, only sort of one's been found to be effective. And many of the drugs that have been tested have often been tested twice or 3 times due to sort of poor trial design. Part of that issue lies in the nature of MND. It's a very fast progressive disease, which makes research in the topic area difficult. And it's also quite what we call heterogeneous. So a lot of people who experience with MND are very different. Some people, around 10% of people, what we call long survivors, they can survive up to 10 years or more of MND. Well, like I mentioned before, most people with MND only end up living around 18 months to 2 years. So overall, it's a very difficult disease to research and requires sort of quite a unique trial design. And that's kind of what MND SMART is. So I'll go through the name and sort of explore how the trial design is sort of optimized to make the best out of a very sort of tough condition. So the S refers to sort of a systematic trial, which means that we go through systematically every drug that might work. And we have a very rigorous link with the Euan MacDonald lab, who systematically go through hundreds and hundreds of possible medications. And this is then brought to a range of clinical advisors and clinical specialists who then look at the side effect profile, whether we know anything about this drug, and it was just where we make sure that we go through rigorous detail of how available this drug is and what the potential uses of it. It's also what we call multi-arm trial. So this is a key aspect of the trial. It's something that you have seen in sort of clinical trials in relation to sort of oncology and cancer, but nothing in neurology. And MND SMART is the first multi-arm trial for neurology in the UK. And it means that we can test a number of drugs at any one time. So when the trial first launched, we were testing memantine and trazodone, so testing 2 drugs at the same time. And we're now, at one point, we're also testing the memantine alongside with it. So we're testing 3 drugs at once, along with a standard placebo group. The trial is also adaptive, so it's an adaptive trial, meaning that we can stop drugs working, or stop drugs if we know they're not working before the end of the trial period. So most trial designs have a sort of a set time period that they'll be testing drugs, so 2 years or 3 years. But with MND SMART, we'll be doing what we call interim analysis. That means that, say, at 6 months, at 12 months, or whenever we have enough data, we can try and assess to see if the drugs are working. And if they aren't, then we can stop them and stop people getting randomized to drugs we know aren't effective. And this is currently what happened with the 2 drugs that we started off with, memantine and trazodone, where around sort of the year to 18-month mark, we had enough data to determine that the drugs weren't useful. And so we stopped them and stopped people getting randomized to them. And the final 2 aspects of MND SMART is as a randomized trial. So these are essential in ensuring high quality data. As I mentioned before, lots of drugs have been tested multiple times, for example, lithium. And the issue is that the data surrounding them wasn't strong enough to determine if the drug was positive or negative. And so by having a randomized trial design, it does mean people might be in a placebo group, but it does mean that the results we get from the trial is a lot stronger and we can make more definitive answers. And like I mentioned, the trial aspect is ensuring that we have sort of sufficient data to ensure that this drug slows down the rate of MND versus a placebo drug. And I'll just show this short video on MND SMART.
There are several drugs that look promising in experimental models for multineuron disease, but the only way we can test these is in clinical trials. We've now reached our second interim analysis point for the first 2 drugs being tested in the trial.
This means we can stop testing drugs that are ineffective in slowing down MND due to emerging results.
The data has been reviewed and it's been decided to stop trialling trazodone and memantine, as it is highly unlikely to benefit people with MND. It is good that we now know definitively that neither of these drugs work for people with MND. Your contribution to MND research has made this decision and breakthrough possible.
There is the opportunity for you to rejoin MND SMART, be randomised to other arms of the trial, and continue to help us to trial drugs that slow down the rate of progression.
Every trial appointment, blood sample and diary entry that you have completed has benefited the trial. Your commitment is helping establish new treatments for MND.
We're really just at the first step of our journey. MND SMART is very much a long-term effort. We will continue working closely alongside you to keep testing drugs until we discover better treatments to improve outcomes for people living with MND.
I think what I just wanted to highlight as well, just before I pass back over to Amy to discuss sort of trial design and setting up a research trial, is that with the multi-arm status, is that once people have finished the drug arm, they can rejoin another drug arm. So I know in Edinburgh, we've recruited around about 50% of the participants whose drug arms were dropped when we stopped lamenting the trazodone. And I just want to sort of highlight that just real quick before I pass over to Amy.
Thank you. So as you've heard, MND SMART is really a long-term effort. And since our plan is also to continue to build momentum to find new treatments as well. So you can see here that we launched in 2020, and since then we've been able to recruit exponentially because we've got so many trial centres, recruitment centres that we've been able to set up across all 4 UK nations. And so there's been really no shortage of interest in the trial. And our goal is to ensure that we continue to strive for equity of access for people with MND throughout the UK, so that people can access a trial regardless of geographical location, social status or ethnicity. So far, with the trial, we've definitively tested our first 2 treatments, trazodone and memantine, and that's happened in half the time taken for conventional trials. So that's the benefit of a trial like MND SMART. And so we're continuing to train and set up trial centres across the country. And this has really been a huge joint effort and has only been possible thanks to our charitable funding to build this long-lasting infrastructure to be able to run such a trial, and also to have the knowledge to run this kind of trial design. So in order to deliver a clinical trial, there's a large number of people involved. So for MND SMART, we have over 300 people across the UK who are working as part of a multidisciplinary team of research doctors, nurses, pharmacists, couriers, statisticians, and our trial management team. So there's lots of different multidisciplinary teams that we have to communicate with. And as a trial manager, my role is to ensure that all the sites are recruiting to the trial and collecting, that all the research nurses are appropriately trained to the trial, that they're collecting the right data consistently in order to be able to achieve the definitive answers that we seek for the treatments in the most efficient way possible. So that's similar to, say, setting up with headquarters. So, for example, for a brand like Costa Coffee, they're trying to set up a network across the UK that will be able to deliver the highest quality with consistent standards across the UK. So similarly to that, we want to be able to deliver a network of sites that are delivering the quality of data that we want to be able to achieve the answers that we seek in terms of treatments for motor neuron disease. So how do we build this network of people who can deliver the trial? So we have a trial protocol which outlines exactly what we're aiming to achieve. And when we're setting up the trial, all of our sites need to have a copy of this paperwork. And there's then a set of legal requirements where each research centre will need to have the capacity to be able to run the trial. So they need to be able to evaluate that, and they have to have all in place to be able to be approved by our inspectors or regulators for the trial. So that means standard drug trial requirements, and also it means that everyone needs to be trained on the paperwork that we provided them with and on the trial. So the importance of this is that the statisticians need to have the right data to be able to achieve our primary aim of seeing if the treatments slow the progression of MND or prolong survival. So having accurate or reliable data means that we can find the answers and be certain of the answers as well. So I've mentioned that MND SMART is a huge team effort, and the most important part, members of the team for the trial, is really the people living with MND who are at the centre of all our research. So from the setup of the trial to delivery of the trial, we've been in open consultation with people living with MND, relatives, partners, carers, about the trial design. So it was particularly important for us to be able to reach a wide audience for trial participation, because previously in motor neuron disease research, only 5% of people with MND in the UK had taken part in a trial. And typically inclusion criteria had been very narrow. So working with people with MND has allowed the trial to reduce the burden of taking part in the trial and enable inclusivity also throughout disease progression as well. So we've done this by enabling drug deliveries directly to participants' homes, and also making sure that we can decentralize the trial, so doing remote appointments and bringing in electronic data capture methods as well. And then we also have plans to incorporate digital technologies as well. So this is to make it easier to take part in clinical trials. They've been at the centre of the research. And then I think also what's particularly important with trial management is really the relationship building. So without people willing to take part, we wouldn't be able to run the trial. So we've got 850 participants in the trial currently, or over and above that number at this point in time, and they've really given us their time to collect the data and to test the drugs. So we're hugely grateful to them. And we've also built a rich set of data that will further our understanding and capability to fight MND. So clinical trials really require a huge amount of resource to run and continue to grow as well. So as well as the people willing to take part, we need people willing to fund us as well. And clinical trials, they cost on average approximately 80 to 100,000 a month for MND SMART. So in particular for MND Scotland, the funds have enabled us to build the long-term infrastructure to retain expertise and also expand further research opportunities. So some of the areas that we cover relate to the development, manufacture and provision of the drugs to the sites and then to participants' homes. And then also we cover travel to appointments, supporting analysis of the research blood samples, where we're looking to find new biomarkers of disease, digital technologies, introducing those, and then also disseminating the results at events and training days. So there's a huge amount of resource that's involved. So we need people willing to take part, people willing to fund us, and also all of the research teams involved in delivering the trial. So I'll hand over now to Ethan to be able to talk about some of what impact the trial's making.
Yes, so thank you, Amy. So in terms of when we talk about what impact the trial's making, I think there's like different areas that we can talk about. So we can talk about the scientific evidence and the benefit for the scientific community that we're introducing with MND SMART. We have a lot of interaction, like I said, with the Euan MacDonald lab that supports not just the drug discovery program, but also understand more about motor neuron disease, and just a whole improvement of the scientific field in general. But I think for me personally, from what I see in day to day, there's lots of benefits to the participants themselves. I think these are some of the quotes that we've had from some of the interviews that we've had done around MND SMART. And I think a lot of it just highlights key points that the participants have said about being involved in MND SMART. A lot of people have a lot of altruistic aims, and I think that's just a real big joy to work with. We're given how devastating we know MND can be, They still have such a optimism for the future, and a willingness to take part and improve the care for future people diagnosed with MND, and I think that's just really honourable. And there's the fact that we can also offer people a bit more support, whether that's assisting clinical teams with adding clinical measures or just giving people an opportunity to talk more about their condition. And I know for some of the participants that I've worked with, that's really helped. And I think we can see that in some of the quotes that you can see on the screen as well, where as much as the people of the participants that we have on the trial are helping us, I do also like to think that we're helping them a wee bit, and just by offering a bit more support and understanding and giving them a chance to be involved in research is really essential. I think, like Amy had mentioned, so few people before MND SMART had been able to be involved in research, and to give people with MND, and not just people with MND, but also their families and carers, the opportunity to be involved is a really nice feeling, and it's just a joy to work with the participants that we do. And so then just to finish up, so following our interim analysis and the closure of amantine and trazodone, we have been able to get published. And when we talk about our scientific data and the rigorous detailing of the trial, and how quick it is, I think nothing's more, this is all sort of encapsulated in the ability to get promoted and published in the Lancet, which I think we previously showed how it's similar to Hello magazine. It's a really big thing within the scientific community, and the ability to get published in that just shows the strength of our data, and the benefit of our results, really, and just shows that, as we mentioned in the video and as Amy's mentioned, that this is just sort of the start, and MND SMART will be a long-term project, and we will aim to sort of test more treatments, and hopefully find some medications that can be used for the treatment of MND. I'd just also like to take this point to highlight, for anyone interested in sort of keeping updated, that we do have a Twitter, or now known as X, handle, and we also have the MND SMART website that people can access to find sort of more information. We are hopefully having the interim analysis of our amantadine arm, so people can stay updated about the results of those. And we are also hopefully adding a new medication, a new drug arm, which again, people can be updated. And just for anyone who was on the previous drug arms and are interested in being unblinded and knowing what drugs they're on, we will hopefully be able to release that information as well. So within the next few months, we should have a lot of sort of key information to sort of highlight to everyone. And I think that is everything. So obviously, we'd just like to thank our funders. We'd like to thank MND Scotland particularly for giving us a chance to talk today. And I think for us, and for me specifically, I'd like to offer a big thank to our MND SMART participants. The trial doesn't run without you. And just like I mentioned before, the altruistic ability and the optimism is just really rewarding to work with, and it's been a pleasure to be involved in this trial. And I'd like to thank the patient public involvement groups and just the wide team of researchers as well. And yeah, is there anything else, Amy?
No, as Ethan said, thank you to all of the people who've been involved from MND SMART. It's been a huge effort across the board.